Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and in this video I am going to be painting a peacock based on a photo of one I took at the local Woodland Park Zoo. Now I am starting this painting with a loose wash, but this one has a plan. So I'm going to be putting, this is Magic Wizard by Rockwell Canada, and I'm going to put that in both the corners of my paper to add some warmth. It was a sunny day, and as well as some visual interest, because I don't want to just paint a peacock floating in space, and I find it easier to put my background in first and then paint on top of it versus trying to figure out a background later. Splashing in a little bit of Amazonite Genuine because I'm going to be using that on my peacock, and I want to marry the colors. I want to keep things nice and cohesive. I don't want block of color, block of color, block of color. I do want some harmony, so I am going to be dropping colors in other areas just so it's not such a stark change. Now, one of my favorite texture techniques is to add salt to my wash, and so I just grabbed some kosher salt and sprinkled it on the drying wash. Right now I'm going down into my lower corner and adding in that golden Magic Wizard color. Now, I want you to look up at the upper left portion of my paper. Do you see those beautiful watermarks coming from adding that water into the paint that was already on my paper? I love the texture that that creates. And with this particular paint, it's a golden brown, but it starts to split into like yellows and pinks, and I can see some of the hints of pink up in that upper corner. So once again, splattering in some of that Amazonite Genuine. And now I'm going to figure out where I want to put my peacock, because I am working without a sketch, so I am just going in with confidence and loose brush strokes. So in this segment, I'm going for the tail and lots of splatter. I want movement, and I want the tail to diffuse into that lower area, wet into wet, so it creates a little bit of ambiguity. Going in now with some sap green for a portion of the body of the peacock. And one of the cool things about this particular peacock in real life is at the zoo, the peacock just roams free. So you could be walking around the zoo and then suddenly peacock. And sometimes it's almost like a fun little game of like, you're just walking and then you look into the trees and the bushes that are kind of just off to the sides, and suddenly there he is. So right there, I've grabbed some granulation fluid and I've put it into my Amazonite Genuine to disturb the wash a bit to create some texture. When it comes to feathers, I am very lazy, so I will do things like dry brush techniques, watermarks, anything to create the feeling and illusion of feathers without having to go in and paint all the details. Going in with some more salt, because again, that is like my favorite way to create texture, but I'm just doing that where the feathers are going to be very small and tight on its back. I am not adding it to the tail. All right, look at those lovely salt patterns. I love how this dried. And now I'm going to be adding in the neck and the head of the bird, and I'm using Winsor & Newton's Phthalo Blue Red shade. And again, since I'm not using a sketch, you saw me using my fingers to measure things out. Off to the side, I have my reference image with a grid on it to match the proportions of my paper. And so even though it's not exact, I do use those grids as a relative placement so that I get my proportions correct. Also, otherwise, I have a tendency to paint too big, and then with the way that the tail and the body's already on the paper, I would run the risk of the head just being clear off the paper. And I mean, that could be a really interesting surreal piece. That wasn't what I'm going for, so that's why I paint with a grid off to the side. But I don't draw the grid on my paper because I don't want those grid lines showing through on my art. Now, because this is early on in the painting, I am keeping my colors pretty light. Like phthalo blue can get really deep and dark. it is a staining color, so I do need to be pretty confident. I can't scrub that out later. But I do want to go in light to have the white of the paper shine through, maybe even create some lovely textured watermarks, and I can always go back in and deepen things later. Putting some water into my blue section just to disturb the paint a little bit, adding some more texture. And as far as my brush strokes go, I'm being careful to follow the direction of the feathers, just because if I'm not going to be painting all of those feathers in, I do want my brush strokes to mimic the direction. And now I'm going in with that dark blue and putting in the eye of the feathers, you know, those really iconic peacock feather tops. So I'm just going and dotting those in, because without those, it's not a peacock. Now, just for full disclosure, I have sped this video up to about 200%. Otherwise, we would really be here for quite a long time, because I do take my time in deliberating what brush strokes to make. Yes, with watercolor, you want to paint a bit quickly if you want to work wet into wet, but you don't want to rush. It's important to take your time, think things through, but I feel like at 200% you can easily tell what I'm doing. And speaking of what I'm doing, I've pulled out a size 2 rigger brush, and I'm painting in those side feathers of its wings, and they look like really thin stripes. And so I'm going in. Value is what's important here. Those side wings are typically like a light tan, and I'm not too concerned about color right now. I'm just concerned about getting my shapes and values in. It was getting a little too blue there, so I've gone in, dropping in some paint to warm that section up. Now I'm going in with that Amazonite Genuine to darken the section between the wings, because I find that creating form is the most important. I mean, color really does a lot of the work, especially in a peacock. But I do want to make sure that I use my shadows properly to bring things forward or set things back to create a more three-dimensional form. All right, going in now, I want to put the legs on this peacock, and I'm going to be honest, doing bird legs and feet is a little difficult for me, but I am doing the trick of paint what I see, not what I think I see. So I was taking some time staring intently at my reference image, and I'm making my brush strokes I'm trying to be very confident with them, placing them down, because nothing screams, I don't know what I'm doing, like unconfident brush strokes. And by that I mean where like you put down a line and you're like blocking it in little bitty sections, and then you erase it, and then you go back in, then you erase it, which erasing in watercolor is just bleeding it away with water. And speaking of about to bleed things away with water, I put in this line to create some shadow and more movement and direction, but then I decided that I didn't like it. And so I grab a nice big mop brush and I bleed it away. Watercolor does have a rap for being unforgiving, and in some cases, yeah, I totally get that. Like if I'd gone in with that phthalo color, rip to me. But I was smart enough with my foresight of going in with color that would lift easily. And by using colors already in my composition, bleeding it away just makes it part of the background. But that is one way to deal with mistakes, is just make sure you work quickly. Going in now, making the crown of the peacock a little stronger with my phthalo blue, and dropping in some more of those eye marks, but I want them to be diffused wet into wet and bleed into the background. Going in with my magic wizard and adding little bits to those feather eyes. Hi, Valerie here. I just wanted to pop in real quick and ask, do you want to paint with bold, vibrant watercolor? Well, I teach you how to paint this beautiful, dare I say, elegant elephant using bright tube paints and lovely texture effects. Just go down to the link below, and it doesn't cost any money. Sign up and you get a free watercolor lesson along with the line art so you can follow along. Okay, back to the video. And welcome back. I started putting in the eye of my peacock and I forgot to hit record until I began to work on the beak. So I've gone in with my magic wizard and using a strong value, put in the eye, and then using that same watercolor painted in the beak. And I didn't really like the eye placement, so luckily this paint lifts pretty easily. I wet it, grab my paper towel, and dab it up. Now I'm going in, adding a little more detail to the feet, just because there is form and shadow. And if I'm gonna have form and shadow on my peacock, I don't wanna just leave the feet there like, oh, I didn't know what to do, so I didn't do anything. So I do go in and add a little bit of shadow, but because this isn't the most important part, I do bleed it away a bit. So right here, I'm going in with a sparkly watercolor. My sister got me these really cool shimmery paints for Christmas. And if there's a place to use shimmery, sparkly paint, it's a peacock. Those birds are fabulous. And this one is no different. Now, the reason that after I washed away and dabbed up the eye and went and worked on other areas instead of trying to fix the eye right away is because that area is wet. If I go in and try and paint that eye right now, it's just going to bleed and diffuse, and that's not what I want it to do. All right, at this point in the painting, I am not too happy with it. It's just, I'm finding it a little boring, so I'm thinking, oh, I need to go strengthen the color of my peacock's neck, which I go in with a big mop brush, because that's another nice little tip, is work with the biggest brush that you think this painting will handle. And honestly, once you determine that, go one size bigger. But I'm going in now with my smaller brush, adding in more of that blue, just to see if going in with bolder color satisfies me. Spoiler alert, it did not satisfy me. So while my painting had puddled blue paint on the neck of the peacock, I just picked up my paper and whacked it on my desk to create some drips, because it was boring me. And I needed to do something to make me feel excited about painting this. And so I'm going in with a wet mop brush and I'm encouraging some of that paint to flow downwards. And I'm looking at it and I'm already much happier. However, it does create too stark of a line from the beak down to the bottom, which, even though I am happier, I'm not happy with it. So I do go in with some other techniques. So right now I am spraying some of that blue paint on top of the crown to loosen it up, make it a little more abstract, and add some more motion. So at this point, I've kind of gone off the rails. I just want to do anything that makes me feel excited about this painting again. Blurring the crown area on the other side of the peacock's head and adding more drips, because just having the drip stop at the beak, that compositionally wasn't very good. But then adding in the color so that it keeps continuing off the other side, much better. I'm far more satisfied. And for me, art isn't so much about rendering something perfectly. I want to feel something. I want to be excited or filled with wonder or curiosity, and that's why I started banging my block of paper on the table, is I had lost that sense of curiosity. And this brought it back. This isn't something I really do in my paintings. And it brought the fun back in it for me. Okay, now I'm going in with a cheap synthetic brush that I have, because I don't want to use my really nice brushes for what I'm doing here. And that is, I've grabbed some Daniel Smith buff titanium, I think is what it's called. It's a watercolor ground, so it's a surface prep, typically. But at this point, I've already gone off the rails. So if I'm going off the rails, I want to go off the rails all the way and hard. So I'm adding this to create some more differentiation in the wings and to fix my shapes a bit, because I ended up spreading those wings a little too far apart. And I just wanted more texture. Like at this point, I was thinking this painting might go in the trash. Why not go crazy? Add some more things, and either I'll save it and it'll be a painting I like, or I'll have learned things. I'll have practiced techniques and persevered to try and quote unquote save a painting. And so another lesson here is you will learn from your failures. And if anything, sometimes those are great because it gives you an excuse to pull out other things that you might not use otherwise and just play. Experiment, try and figure out, will this be the thing that saves the painting? And to some people, maybe yes, maybe no, but you won't know otherwise. So I'm going in with some lovely gold shimmery paint to add in those little feathers on the back, because I love painting with the shimmery paints. Now I've grabbed a brush of mine that is a very weird brush. It's like a straight brush that's been cut so that the bristles are in these weird segments, but that works really well for those like wispy part of the peacock feathers. And of course, shimmery paint. In this case, I think I'm using, it's called Daniel Smith Iridescent Topaz. And I'm just going around all the little eyes to add the shimmery paint, and then just plopping it in other places of the tail as well, because peacock tails are fabulous. Going back to the back, I'm pulling out some more of those shimmering paints that my sister got me for Christmas. There's a lovely one that is a green color, and so I'm adding that into those little back feathers because, as I've stated, I'm already planning to pitch this painting, so why not go all out and have fun with all of my new toys? All right, final bits, going in with some gouache to bring out those wings again. And here's the finished painting. If you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if you have any suggestions for any paintings you want to see in the future, leave a comment because I love getting suggestions. If you want to see more from me, press that subscribe button because I make videos every Monday and Thursday. Thanks so much for watching. See you later. Bye.